Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Greetings. Thanks for joining us here for this episode. I am excited about it. As I've got an old buddy here for a guest. I'll introduce him to you in just a few moments here. But we appreciate your tuning in and turning on to this podcast. It's episode about number 219, 220, right in that range. Don't know how many you've been a part of, but go back into our archives. Check them out. Continue to stay with us, like, subscribe. We've got our QR code on there if you have a desire to help us out financially. But we're just thankful you're here. So let me introduce our guest. He comes to us from the St. Mary's, Ohio area. Brandon Clevenger. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
Look forward to this. It's been a while. If you have listened to every episode, you'll recognize Brandon from episode way back, episode number 27. I believe that was August 2nd of 2022. So we're looking at 3.5 years since Brandon and I have connected. We've had some email communication over different things, but it's great to see him again and have him on board. Brandon, as we were talking earlier here, I know you've had your experiences with addiction, incarceration, but you gave me a little lead in. I'm just going to jump on it like a trampoline, okay? You said that you feel like you've been wandering in the wilderness of late and that you're evidently finding yourself in Christ. Tell us about that. Let's go ahead and begin there, and then we'll veer off as we go.
Yeah, well, somewhere along the line, Randy, I just started making things about me. Like I took my eyes off the Lord, and that's what that wilderness comes into place. And it's just amazing because He has delivered me from that season, and that I'm ashamed to admit that season lasted a lot longer than I really wanted it to, despite many of prayers. And it's just amazing. I don't believe that this timing is by accident whatsoever. I don't. I started over time. I built twin towers in my sin life, and it was pride and self-reliance. And at the end of that road was humbling, but God met me there, spoke to me again and delivered me from that. And I feel like I had to get tore all the way down to be rebuilt. There's that scripture, and I think it's in 1 John, when it talks about there's no fear in the Lord, but perfect love casts out fear. And those who have fear have not yet been made perfect in love. And I think that's exactly what had happened. I had not yet been made perfect in love, despite believing that I had been.
Brandon, you talk about those twin towers of, I think you said pride and self. Is that accurate?
Pride and self-reliance.
Yeah. Self-reliance. If you want to talk about the original sin, I think pride's exactly what it was. I think that's where all of our problems began then and begin within ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. We're the ones who separate ourselves from God. He doesn't move away from us. He continues to chase us exactly like that hound from heaven, just yelping at our heels, trying to get a hold of us. Slow down so I can get your attention, kind of thing. So what was the lights on moment, Brandon, that caused you to say, this is enough? I'm done with living this, this twin tower lifestyle.
Well, it was more of the fact that God shows up despite my failures. It's the goodness of God that leads men to repentance, and that's exactly true. I mean, that is it. God kept showing up, even though I felt like I didn't deserve it, And at sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even want it. It was like almost like I'm trying to go back to sleep in a lot of ways. And that's impossible to do once you've been awakened. You cannot go back to sleep.
Yeah, I get that. That's a great illustration of it. Brandon, do you think your actions, your thinking through all of this was similar to your days of addiction and your attitude towards self and God, the self-reliance kind of thing, the pride thing? I'm going to do this for me regardless. I don't want to put those words or thoughts in your mouth, but respond if you will.
Yeah, I think so. In a lot of ways, some of that old nature that was coming back. And as much as I tried to lie to myself and say that that's not what's happening, that's exactly what was happening. If you boil it down to brass tacks, I started putting the things of God on the shelf and just started doing my own thing little by little. And it started with small decisions. It wasn't this big event that happened. It was little by little, gradually allowing things in that, but at the end of that road, like I said, it's just so empty.
That pride and self-reliance became the drug of the day for you. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go back to those days of true addiction when you were battling the drugs. We're not going to cover the whole story. They can go back to episode 27 and they can get that whole story. But tell them a little, just an overview of a couple, 3 or 4 minutes of what led you to your addiction and what it cost you.
So I started my addiction in my middle school days. I started with marijuana and alcohol. Then I stayed in that state for quite a while. I dabbled with some cocaine here and there a little bit. But then in my 20s, I got a girl pregnant, but we were not together. And during that process of her telling me that because of my lifestyle, I wouldn't have nothing to do with my child, I lost it. Going out and drinking and what I thought was having a good time with my friends totally turned into something more than that. It turned into, I'm not going to leave this place until I can't walk. And this was right in the middle of the big heroin boom when it seemed like everybody was doing heroin at the time. So I started surrounding myself with people that were using harder stuff. And then I noticed, I'm spending $120 to get into the condition that they are getting for $10. And, so I naturally gravitated towards that because that's what I wanted. I wanted that numbness, that detached feeling. And heroin brought me to what I thought was my rock bottom, but it wasn't. I ultimately ran from my addiction. I went to Tennessee for a fresh start. By that time, my daughter she was probably close to a year old. And, watching her drift away from the Greyhound is something I will never forget. That moment tore me up. But I'm thankful for that moment today because without that moment, I wouldn't be here. Because it was ultimately in Tennessee that I ended up getting clean. Now, that was a rough road because I'm a little stubborn, so my behaviors didn't change. So I started doing methamphetamine. I ended up committing a burglary down there. It was against some family, and that put me in prison for about 2.5 years.
That was there in Tennessee that you served, correct?
Yes, it was in Tennessee.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and then getting out, and I used the entire time I was in prison. I did not have the willpower to say no. I was locked in a room with my drug of choice, and that was extremely hard. But the Lord was there through that. I was trying to press in. I was trying to get closer to Him, but I would close my Bible, and I would get up and walk and find drugs, and that was a terrible experience. But the Lord pulled me through that, and getting out, life has looked radically different. I got out and started volunteering at a sober living home for men that was in St. Mary's. It's no longer there now, but that turned into a full-time job there, and then later led me into the behavioral health field. I work for a company called Foundations over there. I've been there for 6 years. I've been out of prison for 8, and it's just been an amazing ride.
Tell us about your role there at you said it's Foundations, correct?
Yeah, it's Foundations Behavioral Health. And
Okay. Tell us about your role.
so I started off as a peer recovery coach, and that means you use your lived experience, right, to try to reach others and help them stay engaged and get the help to help them stay sober. Then that kind of turned into a little bit more case management stuff. Then I started utilizing what's called a CDCA. I don't know if they have that in Indiana. I know it's an Ohio thing, but that allows me to work almost like an internship, but to actually provide substance abuse counseling. And
Tell them what those initials stand for, please.
yeah, so it stands for Chemical Dependency Counseling Assistant, and it's like working under an internship. So I don't have the licensures required by the state and all that kind of stuff, but this allows me to kind of piggyback off somebody else's licensure, which is cool. And this has all been done without college, and I wholeheartedly believe that's a God thing. Like, I want to go back to school, but I'm able to do it without school. So
what's a typical day, if there is such thing, look like for you, Brandon?
Work, man. I go in and I take what I do very seriously. Like, I'm there to try to help people save their lives. Like, I'm dealing with the people that they're down on their luck, or this might not even be a down on your luck scenario. It could be like this is a lifelong pattern and more like generational curse type things. And this could have happened to their families and their families before that. And, sometimes it's really hard. That's why it's important to stay plugged in with the Lord. Like, it can take it out of you.
Are you within your job allowed to share your faith, or only when it is addressed by the client?
So it's really only when it's addressed by the client, but I get a little creative in that, Randy. I'm not going to lie. So, I mean, that's what I'm passionate about. So I'm always trying to like plant them seeds and to get them to be open enough to have conversation about the spiritual side of life. Because what I have noticed, and you might not find this statistic anywhere, but the people who really press in with faith, they go a lot further. And I wish I was able to kind of say those things a little more often.
No, we respect that totally, and glad that you push it as far as you can, okay? Right. We've spoken in enough schools. We recognize there's a line, and we're not to cross that line, but it doesn't mean we don't suggest for you as a student to cross that line. That hopefully we can touch your mind, create in your heart a question that'll help you dig into your own personal faith. Brandon, what do you see within those that you deal with, your clients, other situations? What do you see as our biggest struggle overall in reaching recovery, or reaching those, let's start with this, reaching those who are in addiction?
That's got to go back to pride. A lot of the people that I meet with, they don't want to talk to me. So then you have to break that wall down first, because either the court's telling them to come in, or maybe a family member has been telling them, hey, that this behavior is just not okay. And if you want to continue to have help, then you're going to have to seek help. So there's a lot of tearing that down first to get to what's really going on with them. And it's hopelessness.
What do you see? Man, I keep thinking of the word pride, so now you've got my question blocked, because I know that's going to be the answer whether you state it or not. That's fine. But what can we do as an outside culture, in the sense of those of us who are not dealing with an addiction, past, present, and hopefully not in the future? What can we best do to help those who are dealing with it?
Just show compassion. I mean, there's a lot. I think, COVID really changed some things and how we behave as a nation and as people in general. Like, there's less and less compassion for people out there. And it's so important. Like, these people that are out on the streets and they're still using, they're still sick, they're still people. They still have hope. And I know how I've been close and tried to help people that I'm really close to get clean. And that's a hopeless feeling because you can't make the good decisions for them, right? And if you're somebody like me, I needed those negative consequences to get to where I am today. Without it, it would have been futile. It would have been.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth. Let me figure out the best way to ask this. Most of the time, must we hit a rock bottom before we are ready to start climbing upward?
I believe yes. You talk to other people, you might get a different answer with that one.
I'm asking you and respect that answer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe yes. I mean, that's what it took for me. I wanted to change, but the rubber didn't meet the road until I hit that rock bottom. Everything I tried to do fell apart, and I now know that was God.
Brandon, we've got a question here from one of our listeners. Let's have Eric share that with us. Eric?
Hey, Brandon. Is it difficult not to be tempted to go back to the addiction when you were in it each day with other addicts?
As of now?
Like, are you tempted by the other addicts?
No, not now. My first year of recovery was really hard and that was really tempting, but the longer that time goes on, it has gotten easier and easier, and that's not my doing. I truly believe that is done by God. And what does seem to happen is other things of the world try to come in, and then I take everything to the max. I have the addictive personality. I have that genetic defect that science would say. So I can take good things to the max too. So I have to be very careful about my behaviors and what I allow into my life today.
Brandon, do you see addiction as a disease? And if not, how do you see it?
I see the argument for both sides. I do believe that there is an element of disease to it. I do. And that's probably because I do the work that I do. I've read the statistics, but honestly, Randy, I truly believe it's generational curses. That's what the word talks about. And that's why we see it from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next.
The word speaks directly to the idea of alcohol being that generational curse, how it will visit generation after generation. And I don't recall exactly, but it takes like 6 or 7 generations to get it out of the family system, for lack of better, terms with that. And I'm sure most any addiction's going to work the same way. So, do you see the decision for recovery? Do you see that as coming from is recovery choice or disease controlled? It's a little twist on the question.
Yeah. I think recovery is a choice. It's far too easy to stay where you're at. And them first stages, that first year is so crucial. And especially if you're like coming out of incarceration and addiction all at once, like all of the darkness and all that stuff will just, that's the only time that free drugs will land in your lap, or that, maybe that old girlfriend wants to come around and open that door for you. Like, the enemy is there trying to pull you back. And that decision is just right there. It's right there.
Which is the stronger, the disease or my choice?
The choice is stronger. The choice is much stronger.
How much stronger in your mind? And I'm not asking numbers per se. How much stronger in your mind is that choice when Christ makes it and you listen to it.
I think we've been created with desire in us. So if we turn our will and our desire into something or put it towards something, I don't think there's much that can stop that. I just don't.
I have always said, you talked about how it isn't a coincidence that we're here together. It's not happenstance. It's part of the God's plan, God's timing. I always like it when somebody say, what are the odds? I like to think with God, there are 1,000 to 1 in our favor.
Yeah.
Okay. You and I couldn't have planned this out, and we didn't. But God, speaking to both of us, has us together today. And so, when he is on our side, scriptures say, who, what can stand against us? And so we can overcome the greatest of obstacles or challenges through him and by him. And then you get into Philippians and it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So when we draw upon that combination of promises, man, we've got a foundation to, instead of a rock bottom, it's a spring bottom that we can bounce up high from, much like that trampoline I mentioned earlier, and would get that running start with us. What is a message you have for the recovery community? Those individuals out there who are maybe listening to us are battling in their head and their heart between how bad do I want recovery when I'm enjoying this drug so much, or they think they are.
God has always provided a way out. There is a way out. There is hope. This can be done. He never promised that path would be easy, but it is worth it. It is worth it.
I'd love that idea that he never promised it was easy, but it's certainly worth it in all things. What are your thoughts on I know in Ohio, marijuana is legal, medical marijuana. Now, here in Indiana, that's not the case. So I don't know. Do you have any idea how long ago that decision was made, Brandon, to legalize medical marijuana in Ohio?
I think it's been legal for a little over a year.
Okay, so not a long time, really. Have you seen in your head results from that legalization? Has it been a positive, a negative? How's it changed the game in legalities, in recovery, in addiction? What's that look like in your head and heart? I'm only asking your opinion. This doesn't have to be your professional approach, but help us out.
So I see this in different facets. So I've heard a lot about in the recovery community that marijuana is infiltrating that, and then that's a hot button issue at certain meetings and stuff at times. But I've also seen, so now let's just say if somebody was to fail a drug screen for marijuana, like part of my job would be, hey, I have to meet with this person so many times. And most people don't realize, although it may say that it's legal, right? You still can't smoke it and have it in your system at work. So there's a lot of inconsistencies there. And I think there's a lot of people that are confused out there of what's really going on. So
I just recently found out that you couldn't use it in a combustible way. I did not know that. But like I said, we don't have that law here in Indiana yet. We've got another question. Eric, shoot it at us, please.
Yeah. How important is family support to an addict? What advice do you have for families dealing with addiction?
don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. That's my advice. And sometimes hope may not look like hope in the traditional way. Like I said, tough love was very instrumental in me finally laying the stuff down. I had to feel the weight of my consequences. That does not mean that my family didn't love me. It just means that I brought them to that place where they had no other option. And that is where I found this path, was underneath the weight of all those consequences. Burglary, in all seriousness, Randy, I should probably still be in prison. I was a felon that stole a gun that was loaded. And from what my understanding is, for every bullet that was in that thing is another year that I would have had to serve. So
what could the sentence have been under that standard, Brandon?
could have been 10 to 12 years.
And you served how long?
2.5.
Okay. Certainly got at work. And some of us, it takes us longer to get the lesson. We've got to work on the buck until we do. Some of us catch on a little quicker at times, and it works to our benefit just as much so. So the idea of the support from families, we shoot ourselves in the foot. We cause our families to make decisions, number one, they shouldn't have to make. And number two, it can't be the decision they want to make. Number three, it's not on them, because the actual recovery decision belongs to who? The one who is using, yeah? So we want to love them, we want to support them, but that love, just as you said, at times has to be hard love. It has to be a decision that may not be to everybody's favor. And our moms are different than our dads are different than our sisters are different than our brothers. That list goes on. And so we're forcing them to get involved in something that they only involve themselves with because they love it. I'm sure they'd rather walk away in most cases, but they know that's not family. Okay? What, Brandon, is it? What kind of advice could you give to our school students today of the temptations that are there, the possibilities, the Friday night party, etc.? What is it you think you could say that would make a difference for them, a positive difference?
It's not worth it. You may think what you're doing is innocent, but it's not. Nobody wakes up saying, I want to be an addict today. And it always starts with that red Solo cup and that joint. It does. And that's, there's a lot of debate on, is it marijuana a gateway drug? Is it not? But everybody's story starts there. They didn't stay there, but it started there. So it's not innocent. It's not all fun and games.
I have always said, out of my own personal experiences and beliefs, that marijuana and alcohol may be the gateway drugs, but trauma is usually the gateway to the gateway drug if we dig back farther, and we've got to deal with that core issue. How have you managed to deal with the core issues of your life, Brandon?
Oh man, it's got to be. It's with the word. It's the renewing of your mind and your heart, and turning things over to God. And
you keep turning it back to God, back to God's word, back to His leadership, back to His love with everything. It sounds like you've got an answer.
And it's so crazy, because in my first stages of this walk, and people would tell me, just let go and let God, I would get angry at that because it just sounds so simple. And I thought they were messing with me or something, that like, but what I found was I am overcomplicating that. I'm getting in my own way. It just is that simple.
Start with the word. build the relationship between yourself and the author of that word, come to know his son, the one that it's basically about. You know, he is the origin of the purpose in my mind, okay? And as we build that relationship, we start to turn away from those things the world has to offer, and we get into a positive environment that just leads us deeper into that relationship that grows our potential, that helps us become that individual God's created us to be. It's not a matter of me knowing the book more than you do or me being more of a prayer warrior than you are. It's a matter of how much of Jesus do I want. This isn't a competitive thing. We're in it together, just as we are. The addiction issue, the recovery battle, all of it. Here at the end of this episode, you'll get the 4 words: stay in the battle. You stay in the battle by staying in the word and by staying on your knees. That's where it begins, folks. And you let it grow within your heart and you build that and you share it. You don't conform to the things of this world, but you be transformed by the things of God. As you're drawn closer to him, you get farther away from everything else behind you, and you start to see, feel, experience. I don't like to use the word feel, but there is a piece of that in there. You experience the other side, that positive side. Brandon, what is it about your work that keeps you going back every day? You said you've been with them about 6 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About
So
6 years.
as you said, there are days that knock you down. How do you deal with that?
So, throughout the years, there was times where I didn't deal with it well. I'm just going to be honest with you. And like when I came into the field, I had no boundaries whatsoever. I had to learn all that stuff on the fly. And, that I had to make a lot of mistakes and learn from those. But what keeps me going to work is that one person on my caseload that is sincere and that is trying, and they're pressing in, and they're talking about it, and they're showing up, and there's just no better feeling when something that you've tried to speak on or try to wake somebody up to, and they actually get it and it clicks for them. Like there's just no
It's
better
worth it
feeling.
all,
It,
isn't it?
it is. It's worth the 20 other people that didn't want to make the right decisions for this one person. But I work with some amazing people, and what I've come to find out is everybody has something that's brought them into that field. Like whether it be a family member dealing with addiction or a mental health crisis, like something has inspired them to try to go out there and be that change for people, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Brandon, that's where you and I got started back in your early days, right? As you were a member of A Better Life, Brianna's Hope, you led our chapter there in St. Mary's. You continued to grow and you moved into another level of life, another level of recovery work. But I knew you in the beginning, and to see it now, it's that same feel for me. That's why I come here every week. It's why I continue to be involved after 11 and a half years with the program, to get to see this kind of change and to get to see you pay it back, pay it forward, I'll say, simply because of being involved as a recovery coach and CD, whatever it was, okay, those other initials that put you into the counseling arena and all of that together, to get to feel like you've been a piece of that and a piece of their finding true life. Wow, there's not a much bigger reward. So, yeah, I get what you're saying here. Brandon, we've just got a few minutes here. We'll get ready to wrap up. But is there anything else on your head or heart you want to share that we haven't touched on?
You know, I used to think that some of the promises of God and stuff that they didn't apply to me. So I know that what I have learned throughout this process is if I have felt it, I am not the only one. That is what my addiction tried to tell me, is that I was isolated and that I was unique, and that was all lies. Those promises are written for you. They are for you. That word is for you. And so is recovery and all of the beautiful things that come along with that, whether it be restored families, whether it be being out of incarceration, whether it be buying your first home. All that stuff is available for you. You just have to say yes. You just have to say yes.
It's got to start somewhere, and that somewhere has to be right here, doesn't it? Between these two, you work it out, and then you work the recovery. Your program's not going to be the same as the one in front of you or the one behind you. Something, some way will work for you. And when it starts with Jesus, you got a far better shot. Brandon, good to reconnect again. Thanks for everything you're doing, the differences you're making in so many lives, and for spending this afternoon with us. We pray blessings on you, your work, your family, your organization, those you come into contact with. And as we always say, we're going to invite our folks to stay in the battle. I know you're going to, and I know you're going to be there to walk through those battlefields with them. As we both said, parts of it we wish we could do, but that's just like cracking the egg open for a baby chick. You're not going to help them. You're going to cause them great pain, perhaps loss. So, folks, thank you for joining us today on this episode. Brandon, thank you. We look forward to seeing you again with our next episode. God bless. Amen. Final words, stay in the battle.